Welcome to the Ride of My Life podcast. I'm Caroline Rena, and here, let the ride inside adventure begin. I will share what it's like on my own healing journey, and through what I learn and become aware of, provide insight to your journey as well. Hey everyone, welcome to the Ride of My Life podcast. I'm Caroline Rena, and this is season 2, episode 5, I believe. So moving right along. I am now in West Palm Beach again. I've been here for probably about the last week. I'm getting ready to head out to North Carolina into my next adventure. And this week I'd be remiss not to talk about Valentine's Day because it just happened and it was very interesting, some of the stuff that came up for me and in understanding myself, who I am, and how Valentine's Day shows up, like on social media and within relationships and different things like that. As a little girl, I loved Valentine's Day. I used to hand out the little Valentine cards that came in the packages to my friends at school. I made cutouts of hearts and drawings, and it was just one of my favorite holidays. And in the years after that, when I was in relationships, Hallmark probably made a name for itself with the cards, all of the cards that I used to buy, because I just love to purchase cards for those that I loved. So on that note, this year, I didn't have a significant other in my life to lavish my gifts on, so to speak. And I did learn, though, a great deal about love. And this kind of love, people talk about it all the time, and a lot of us really don't understand how it works. I haven't, and that is self-love. And I learned why it was missing in my life, and discovered what I am doing or can do to regain it. So hopefully this will help in understanding what it is and help you to see that you are absolutely worthy and you matter to yourself in loving yourself. And that's what I've figured out. So I'm just going to go real quick on Valentine's Day. The history, the origin of the day is really vague. But there's a legend that I'm going to share from you. I looked it up. I just happened to find it on this website. I don't know, how much truth there is to it or not, but I found it on indianexpress.com. And any truth, any history really conveys the beliefs and the perceptions of the individual that's sharing it. So those in and of themselves there can be many perceptions in any aspect, because we all have a different perception from where we come from. So here goes. So the story of Valentine's Day, it starts with some information on Saint Valentine, who secretly defied the emperor. I can't remember the name of the emperor right now, but the orders to marry. And so he married couples, sparing the husbands from going to war. And that resulted in Saint Valentine being beheaded by the emperor to then celebrating, marking the death anniversary of Saint Valentine in mid-February in 270 AD. So there's a lot of weird stuff behind this, and it's kind of strange, but that's okay. History tends to do that. But there's also been some information that it was traced back to Lupercalia, which is a Roman festival for fertility. And also there was a belief that the day was celebrated in an attempt by the church to give it a religious twist. So my assumption is that back in the day, it used to be more, nature-based religions, and they wanted the religious twist to it. I don't know. That's what I gathered from the information. So anyway, during the festival, men and women were paired based on a lottery, and most ended up in marriage. And at the end of the 5th century, it was decided that it would be the date to celebrate St. Valentine. And there were a few other legends, and Valentine's Day was also mentioned in a poem by medieval author Geoffrey Chaucer in 1381, where some people consider this to be the origin of the modern celebration of love by historians. But wait, what's love got to do with this? So yesterday, when I started writing this, I was actually talking about Monday, this past Monday, when Valentine's Day occurred. And so for me, the discovery of love turned out to be much different between Monday and today. And why is that? Well, I'm discovering self-love, self-worth, and self-esteem maybe more fully for the first time in my life. And how did that happen? Well, like I said, there was no significant other to celebrate Valentine's Day with. So I decided that I would start to, well, I didn't even really decide. It kind of made its debut in my face through some things that happened. But it turned out to be the beginning of an amazing awareness. So especially between everything that had been going on for the last month. All these things opened up. I'm starting to see things differently, starting to learn things about myself differently, all this stuff. So anyway, after I worked all day and I decided I was going to sit down and make a Valentine's card I used to make as a child, which in essence is a piece of, oh no, I forgot the name of the paper. It's I don't know. Anyway, I made it on a piece of paper, red piece of paper, and maybe it'll come to me later. I'll pop in with it later, but I put it on a piece of paper. I did my drawings and I gave it. I used to make these as a child, and I gave it to my former partner's daughter. And I had the opportunity to get to stay with them, spend some time with them. So we had a really, really powerful visit. I had some really, really big things come up for me. And this is what came up after we connected and, exchanged cards and everything. But construction paper, I told you I would get it. Okay. So anyway, I took the opportunity again. Like before, when I was in West Virginia, I was working on EMDR and bilateral stimulation with kinesiology and speaking, the narrative or the beliefs that I believed in, which switched things around in my body and mind to not believe the things that I believed anymore, such as I have to suffer in order to get my needs met. That was a big one. So this time, before I left West Virginia, my friend who was working with me suggested that I do EMDR again on a motorcycle accident that I had been in 2006, because the actual physical part of, I'll explain this in a minute, the physical part of a trauma also sticks in your body, not just the emotions, not just the mental part of it, not just spiritually, the physical stuff stays there. And obviously it's going to have a physical trauma on your body because there was an injury, if there was an injury. So anyway, so I explained on the last blog and podcast that how I ended up driving down in the direction that we went where we got into the motorcycle accident, me and my ex-husband. And so I worked through a lot of emotions with that. If you want to go and look back at that just to see what happened with that, great. And catch yourself back up here. But I mentioned that, again, that trauma is held in the body and the subconscious, and it all works this way. So when I was saying the thing about the physical trauma, it could be from an accident, it could be from surgery, it could be a birth trauma, or it can be an emotional trauma, for example, neglect. So, which is where a lot of mine came from as a child. So what I just want to make clear that I'm understanding is that the body records every single event, traumatic event, good event, all things get stored in the body, and mostly we don't know it. And so what did I learn about this? So I relearned about codependency, narcissism, and devaluing myself. And I knew I was always putting others' needs before my own, to the point where my system, both my nervous system and emotional system, were running my life. And I also discovered that, which there was like an underlying thing with this for me for a long time, but it wasn't expressed until Monday night, that I believe that I have an inherently serious flaw. And a lot of us believe that from childhood, because that's how we took life in. And if we weren't nurtured, then there's something wrong with us. Or if somebody, yelled at us, then we didn't feel good about ourselves because we thought we did something wrong or whatever. So we felt like we were flawed. And that's what I picked up on in a different way this time, because I've heard this stuff before, but I never really took it in like this. And it was like a belief, what I call a belief system fuel on how I did my life. And this flaw consistently led me into toxic shame and had me believing that I had no value. And I felt like I was diminished to nothing or almost nothing. And I always put myself last. That's what it felt like. And it felt like that even as it was coming up, because in order to notice it and understand it, I just had to feel that again. And it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, because I did have someone there obviously supporting me doing it. But it'll hurt a little bit. You'll cry, or whatever reaction comes up, but it helped. And what was interesting is how it helped. And so I'm going to start with that. So the belief I had that came up because of the motorcycle accident. So we're going through this whole thing, and the belief that came up was I don't matter. And one of the reasons why I don't matter, and I can't remember specifically exactly how this came up in my head, but there was something about the fact that in my relationship with my second husband, after the accident, it was almost like he didn't care that I was involved in it with him. Like, he's a real tough guy and very strong as far as being able to deal with things. So things, unless it was something, it was weird, because if it was something with me at that point, it was like I didn't matter. If it was obviously with his kids, his adult kids, and his family or whatever, that part of his family, it mattered. We were already on the outs anyway, I guess, and which was weird, because it was just, anyway, I don't want to get into that. Obviously, that was a long story. So this isn't about him. This is about me and the fact that I felt like I didn't matter. And when did it begin? And so the crazy thing, as I was doing the EMDR, was I realized that it probably began when I was born. I've told the story before. And of course, I have no mental recollection of what happened, because my body was holding the trauma. It may still be, I don't know that yet. As it holds all traumas, as I explained, but it even holds the pre-verbal ones where we don't even know what's going on, where we have no understanding of what happened, where we don't know what emotions and any of that stuff feels like, because, and of course, we can't express it. So I mentioned that story that I had read in the court paperwork, where my mother left me in the hospital room to go and take care of other patients in the hospital, as she used to volunteer as a Red Cross volunteer. And so she left me, and that made me feel, apparently, like I didn't matter. But that was the first one. That was the thing that we first went back to. What did that do? Basically, it triggered how I felt about myself and how I behaved myself in every relationship that I ever had, And it also showed me how the relationship with my mother and my father were, that I didn't matter. And it felt like it brought that up too. So what I recognized was I was so desperate to matter to my mother that every person in my life became her, including me. And I hope you're understanding what I'm saying here. I'll hope that what I explain here kind of points that out. But she always put others first. I put others first. I didn't count in this life, and everything about my life became about the fact that I didn't count. Now, I did not have a relationship with my mother. She was out of my life from the time I was 12 until, I want to say, in my late 30s, and then again for 10 years until I was in my 40s. So as a result, I became codependent, desperately wanting to make sure others were okay so I would feel safe and loved. And so I attracted narcissists into my life because I felt that I didn't matter to anyone. And hopefully that makes sense, because here's what happens, or here's part of what happened. Even the few people in my life who did think I mattered, I couldn't even see it because I was so used to not being seen by the narcissist in my life. That's the best way I can explain it. And I consistently waited, when I did have people who saw me, for the other shoe to drop with them. So at what point, when are you going to stop seeing me? When are you going to stop caring about me? When am I going to stop mattering to you? You know, that type of thing. So now in relation to narcissists, whoever the other person is in relationship with the narcissist does matter to them, but they don't matter to them for the sake of the relationship for the other person. It only matters to the narcissist that it matters for them, for what they want, for what they need, you know, and they're broken, not broken, I don't like that word. They're hurt too, and hurt people. So, so the codependent who got into the relationship with the narcissist sees that they're hurt or broken and immediately understands their pain because they've been through it and they know what it feels like and they want to help them. But the narcissist already knows that he can, at that point, that in my case, that he can get, well, it could be anybody really. And women can be narcissists as well. I think we all have a little narcissism in us. But they know what it feels like. Well, I knew what it felt like, and I wanted to help. I wanted to make them feel better. It was always about them, the other, for me, because here's what happens is that when I did this, it was to the detriment of me, and I gave up all rights to myself because I put it in their court because I wanted something, and I'll explain what I wanted in a minute. So it becomes this downhill, slippery slope from the first encounter with a narcissist, and it only gets worse on each subsequent relationship with a narcissist. And usually once you start that behavior, you're going to keep attracting. That's what I did. I kept attracting narcissists until I choose now not to do that anymore. I'll get into that as well. So when I already felt like I didn't matter, I had to look for ways to be loved. And I found them and immediately began taking care of them and totally ignored me until I started recognizing that I was ignoring myself. And the worse it got as the years went on, the more I found that not only did I not matter to them, that especially in the most recent time, each time I didn't matter to myself anymore, but I recognized that most recently, especially with this EMDR session that I had, that it was like, wait, whoa, okay, so I just don't matter to me. And that's not good, because when we don't matter to ourselves, then there's nothing left. You know, there's no self-love, there's no whatever. And I felt self-love, but this is like a whole different variation of it, because now I'm starting to see how it looks like in relation to other people, not just self-love. I have self-love. I feel I love myself. but I didn't understand what it was like in relation to other people until I started walking through this piece in the last few days. So then I find out that the price of healing from codependency is guilt. Oh boy, just what I need, more guilt in my life. So guilt for not taking care of them more, for them telling me that I was selfish, to the guilt for not taking care of myself, to the guilt for recognizing that I was being codependent with them, so I could recognize the thoughts and beliefs of codependency. So it was a vicious circle. It was like going from them to me, back to them and me, back to it was nuts. And as I let go of putting others first, I also feel guilty about that because I'm so used to being codependent and helping others, and that doesn't work. So there's a little history here. Again, I was parentified by my mother, who even as a 4-year-old, when I was 4, I was meant to put her first and make sure I told her I loved her and ask her about her health. And this happened again when I was 43 years old. Now, a 4-year-old child isn't supposed to worry about their mother. And if there is a narcissistic mother in the picture and they expect you to worry about them, that's not your job. But it took me a long time to figure that out. And I was angry with her for a very long time because it was, my favorite thing was she put it in my court and then gave me a guilt trip by saying, I bore you. Like I had a choice that I was born, you know? And so that stuck with me my entire life. It wasn't fair. And now I get to take a look at it, take responsibility for that and work through it. But it happened and it's okay. And I have done the forgiveness work on her, with her, and she's since passed. And I understand also where she was coming from. So it helped me to work through all that stuff. But the guilt, it lived inside of me of doing it right for her and never for me. And it showed up in every single one of my relationships. And that was such a wake-up call. And I want to add here that generally anyone who blames you for behaving a certain way is behaving in the same way, but they just don't see it. They either consciously recognize it and they don't want to take responsibility for it, or it's subconscious and they don't, it's not on the surface. They don't know that they're doing it. And we all do this in some way. And we all think that someone will behave the same way we do, whether it's like, oh, well, I'm the type of person that I'm always on time, so I expect you to be on time. And not everybody is on time, whatever that looks like. Or something negative, like I'm gonna move in with a married woman, and I suspect that you're going to do that too, and not necessarily. The ex-husband moving in with a married woman, or neither one of them, and then expecting that that was the case for the other person. That's not. It doesn't work that way. Because we aren't the same people, but we see that somehow with each other in certain ways when we're not aware, when we don't take responsibility for our own behavior and our own behavior that comes from the traumas or whatever happened when we were little. So there's a whole bunch of things going on here. It's a lot of information, and sometimes it's not easy to keep up with, but I'm doing my best to share it, even though I know it's kind of all over the place. So bear with me. And then here's where self-compassion comes in. So self-compassion encompasses self-love, self-worth, and self-esteem, which I mentioned earlier. And I had no idea what any of that was, because my concern was always about getting my needs met that I never got as a child. So I wasn't taking responsibility because I really didn't know what I was doing at that point. And I was so busy trying to get the narcissist to take care of those needs and love me. Those were the needs. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be heard, whatever, that type of, I wanted to matter, but it didn't work and backfired. And so I turned everything on its head to make sure I was the one that could do it for them. And that was not a good idea. And I kept doing it until I, I'll be in the last couple of days recognized. So in the process, every time I lost everything I knew about myself because I gave my entire self to them. And I had mentioned that in a lot of times I was being told that I was being selfish, and I'm like watching this whole thing, and I'm doing this, I'm doing that, making sure they're happy, making sure everything's going on, putting myself last, and then being made to feel guilty for being selfish or not doing more for them. So that's a whole nother ball game, and I'll explain how you can work through that piece of it. So that's the challenge, because for years I was told I was selfish, that I only did for myself. I was only looking out for myself. And my discovery was that it was a coping mechanism that I used for self-protection because of the codependency, that I had no idea what to do with or for before I realized fully what was going on. And then the tables began to turn, and I saw what I was doing and why. And my reactions of desperately finding a way to take care of myself after I'd already established this is how you can treat me. And it was okay for me to be codependent. And that turned on me. And when someone is already in a relationship, they get used to a behavior that we offer. They don't like it when we begin to step away from that behavior because they want to hold on to it for themselves. So it's really, it's a catch-22 when you're working in with people who are traumatized in the same relationship. And more times than not, you're not going to see someone who hasn't done their work with someone who is more healed, more regulated than we are in a relationship together, because they won't put up with it. And until we figure it out and take responsibility and do something about it, we're going to end up in the same relationship that we've had over and over again until we learn how to deal with it and to work through it. And so for me, that happened in every relationship. So now I also see how we're told in our society, and both men and women are told this. I think maybe more women than men. That's the because I've seen that. However, I'm sure men have been told this as well, that we need to take care of everyone else before ourselves because we're selfish if we don't, and be there for everyone else. And that's to the detriment of ourselves and our souls. And that's not the answer to this. It wears us down, puts us into all kinds of coping strategies. And in some cases, it creates a situation where one feels like the only way out is suicide because of situations similar to this one. And that's not how life is supposed to be. This is not what life is supposed to be like. And we're blindsided to how things are going for people. When we're in our, when we think we feel safe and when we're in a good space and everything, excuse me, and it just blindsides us to what's going on out there. And there are people out there who look perfectly emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually healthy who are not. They just are good at making themselves look that way because they don't feel safe either to talk about it, because for many, many years, mental health has been a taboo because people think you're crazy if you talk about it. You're hysterical. Women are always hysterical, and that's not true. That's just how we're made up. And the hysteria there's no hysteria. We're expressing feelings that we're not allowed to express because society doesn't like when we express feelings. So how do you work in that? You don't. And so I'm choosing to do it a little differently. I don't consider this being outspoken about it because it's my own personal journey. So I'm just sharing what I've learned, and that's what I'm seeing. And it's crazy. It's just ridiculous how things are put out there for us to believe in, and we get to figure out how to cope with it. And that's not how it should be. Life isn't about coping, it's about living. And so I'm finding out that I am the only person that needs to take care about what matters to me. It's nice to matter to others, and that's a bonus when we do matter to them. When I can fully find that self-love and how much I matter to myself, the self-worth and the self-esteem comes automatically in that territory. And that's where I'm touching. I'm just walking into that. I'm just starting to feel it. I can see a difference. I can feel a difference. And I'm also recognizing too that from the past podcasts I've done, I can see a difference. There are days where it's like, oh, I get it, and then there are days where I'm like, oh, oh my God, it's really cool to watch what's going on. And here it is. The big answer is that I get to be selfish. And I get to put the mask on first on this plane ride before I take care of other people. And also, there's a line drawn with caring for others who can't care for themselves and caring for others who don't want to care for themselves and want others to do things for them. So I want you to know the difference between that. So when I'm talking about, being codependent, that's different. There are things where there are people out there that we do need to take care of because they can't, for physical, mental, emotional, whatever that is, they just can't do it. But then there are people out there, like in my experience, the narcissists in my life were like that. They appreciated the fact that I was caring for them, even though they didn't need me to. They were perfectly capable of it. And I still did it because I wanted them to love me. So there's this whole mishmash of stuff going on here. So for my whole life, I've been afraid of the outcomes of loss. So I molded myself into Gumby to prevent the loss or whatever the outcome might be of having to fix something that I didn't believe that I could handle. And well, I can, oddly, every time something comes up in my life, I have handled it. And that's the crazy part. I just don't remember it sometimes. And I just get to believe that about myself now, that I am capable of doing it. And I'm telling you, with trauma, with a shot nervous system from so much stress and cortisol going through your body and that kind of thing, there's times when, your brain says what the answer is and your body does not respond very well to it because it's stuck in the stress response. And that's what's been going on. And it's hard to control that. And when people start to say, well, why are you stuck in the past? And why are you, whatever, that's not what's going on. My body is reacting to it. My brain has already gotten through all that stuff in my body. So that's why I'm saying the stuff sticks in your body. Your body remembers the trauma. And so the body reacts to it. It's not the mind reacting necessarily. It follows sometimes, and sometimes it leads, by telling us stories. But anyway, having said that, so here's what I get to do. And hopefully you can get something from this as well. I get to forgive myself for all of the things that I did imperfectly. And there were plenty of things that I did imperfectly, but that doesn't mean that I was imperfect. I get to treat myself with the same kindness that I would give to a stranger on the street. And in every way that I behaved, I did it because I didn't know any better at the time. And it was really mucked up way of keeping myself safe, but that's what I did. And now what I know is that I get to do better. I know better, and I get to work on shifting the old behavior into who I really am, the truth inside, the truth of me, the truth of who I am. And that's what my work is here. And to show that it's possible. And I say that every time because, geez, man, if I can do it, anybody can do it. There are certain things that you need to start with. One is a decision. One is just, I don't want to live like this anymore. Being brave and just saying, okay, I'm ready, and even if it sucks or it hurts or something, just do it. Just be persistent because it gets better. I've been doing this for over 30 years. If I can make this easier on someone to share this stuff to make it happen quicker, yay. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. So I had to be in every relationship. This is what I've accepted, and I found that I had to be in every relationship to include my parents so I could learn these things, be hurt by them, and see for myself how I get to stand up for me. It doesn't feel good, and I don't know absolutely 100% the reason why. I've heard things, that our souls chose this path to start on, and then we made decisions, and we still have free will and all these things, but we're still learning. We're always learning. We're always growing. Let yourself do that. That's what I'm doing. And I'm finding things that are so different from what I used to know. And it's insane and it's wonderful. And I hope that you can find that too. And the biggest thing is how I get to stand up for me, because I count, because I matter, because I've got this, and so do you. And so I just want to say that this crazy, like I'm calling it the ride inside adventure, this crazy ride inside on the ride of my life, I don't know where this is going. I don't know what it's doing. And I love it. I love every minute of it, because I get to incorporate the emotional, the mental, the physical, the spiritual, and the rides. Wherever I'm going, I get to experience new people. I get to learn from them. I get to see what I didn't get to see before, because I was isolating myself and sticking myself in a hole where I felt like I was drowning. And so I just want to express to you that there is a way out. I'm going to say that every single time, because every single time I figure it out, I will say that. And then when I go back in the hole for a little bit to figure things out again, I will tell you that too. But anyway, I hope you got something out of this. I appreciate your watching this. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful moment wherever you are. And I will see you next time on the Ride of My Life podcast. All right, take care. Bye-bye.